Maria Rodriguez quietly pushed open the heavy glass doors of Hillcrest Elementary School, her heart beating a little faster than usual. Today was her first parent committee meeting since moving to this upscale neighborhood 3 months ago. She clutched her old brown purse closer to her side as she walked down the polished hallway, her simple black flats making soft sounds against the marble floor. The meeting room was already half full when she arrived. Maria paused at the doorway, taking in the scene before her. The other mothers sat in small groups, their perfectly styled hair catching the light from the crystal chandelier above. Designer handbags worth thousands of dollars sat casually on the mahogany table, while expensive jewelry sparkled on manicured fingers. Maria looked down at her own outfit, a clean white blouse from the discount store and a navy skirt she had owned for years. Her wedding ring was simple gold, bought during happier times when every dollar counted. She had braided her long dark hair that morning, wanting to look presentable but not knowing it would make her stand out even more among these women who clearly visited high-end salons weekly. Finding an empty chair near the back, Maria sat down quietly. She pulled out a small notebook and pen from her purse, ready to take notes about school events and fundraising ideas. Around her, conversations flowed about weekend trips to wine country, personal trainers, and upcoming charity galas that cost more per ticket than Maria spent on groceries in a month. "Ladies, let's begin," announced a tall blonde woman at the front of the room. This was Patricia Whitman, the PTA president, whose voice carried the confidence of someone used to being in charge. She wore a cream-colored suit that probably cost more than Maria's rent, and her smile was perfectly practiced. The discussion quickly turned to the school's annual fundraiser. Patricia explained that they needed to raise $50,000 for new playground equipment and technology upgrades. The women around the table nodded knowingly, as if this amount was pocket change. "I suggest we follow last year's format," said a redhead wearing pearl earrings. "The silent auction at the country club worked wonderfully. We raised $60,000 with just one evening." Other voices joined in with enthusiasm. They talked about securing donations from exclusive boutiques, arranging for celebrity chefs to cater the event, and booking the most expensive venue in town. Maria listened carefully, trying to understand how these fundraisers worked. Finally, she raised her hand tentatively. The room fell silent and all eyes turned to her. Maria felt her cheeks grow warm but pushed forward with her idea. "What about organizing a community bake sale?" she suggested, her voice slightly shaky. "We could ask each family to donate homemade goods and maybe set up some fun activities for the kids. It would bring everyone together, and the children could participate too." The silence that followed felt endless. Maria watched as several women exchanged glances, their expressions unreadable. Patricia's smile remained fixed, but something cold flickered in her eyes. "That's sweet," Patricia finally said, her tone suggesting it was anything but. "However, I think you might not fully understand our school's standards. Our families expect sophisticated events that reflect the quality of education their children receive here." A brunette woman near the front turned slightly in her chair. "We've moved beyond simple fundraising methods," she added with a light laugh. "Our community appreciates elegance and exclusivity." Maria felt her face burn with embarrassment. She had genuinely thought a bake sale would be fun and inclusive, something that would welcome all families regardless of their financial situation. But clearly, she had misunderstood what this school community valued. The meeting continued with discussions about $1,000 auction items and exclusive guest lists. Maria stopped taking notes, instead focusing on keeping her composure. She thought about her daughter Lucy, who had been so excited about starting at this new school. Lucy had made friends quickly and loved her teacher. Maria didn't want her own social struggles to affect her daughter's happiness. As the women planned their elaborate fundraiser, Maria couldn't help but think about her old neighborhood. There, PTA meetings were held in the school cafeteria, with folding chairs and coffee served in paper cups. Parents wore jeans and t-shirts, and everyone pitched in with whatever they could afford. A bake sale there would have been met with excitement and offers to help. But this wasn't her old neighborhood. When her husband David's job had transferred them here, They had been thrilled about the opportunity for Lucy to attend one of the state's top-rated schools. The house they rented was small, compared to the mansions surrounding it, but it was in the right district. They had made sacrifices to afford even that modest rental, cutting back on dining out and vacations to ensure Lucy could have this educational opportunity. Looking around the room now, Maria realized that fitting in here would be more challenging than she had anticipated. These women lived in a world she barely understood, where spending $500 on a single evening's entertainment was normal and expected. The meeting finally ended after an hour of detailed planning for their exclusive gala. As women gathered their designer purses and began forming small groups to continue their conversations, Maria quietly slipped her notebook back into her bag. She stood up slowly, hoping to leave without drawing attention to herself. But as she moved toward the door, she couldn't help but overhear a conversation near the refreshment table. Two women were speaking in low voices, but not low enough. "Did you see her suggestion about a bake sale?" one whispered, stirring sugar into her coffee. "How quaint." "I know, right?" replied the other. "I mean, where does she think we are?" "Some public school in the suburbs." Maria's steps faltered. She pretended to check something in her purse, giving her a reason to pause near the door. "Someone should probably explain to her how things work around here," the first woman continued. "We can't have fundraising ideas that bring down the tone of our events." Patricia handled it well, though. Very diplomatic. "Indeed. Though I do wonder if she'll fit in long term. Sometimes people from different backgrounds struggle to adapt to our community standards." Maria's hands tightened around her purse straps. She wanted to turn around and defend herself, to explain that she had run successful fundraisers before, and that her ideas came from genuine care for the school community. But she also knew that confrontation would only make things worse. Instead, she walked steadily toward the exit, her head held high, despite the burning in her chest. In the parking lot, she climbed into her practical sedan and sat for a moment, before starting the engine. Around her, luxury SUVs and sports cars gleamed in the afternoon sun. As she drove home through the tree-lined streets of her new neighborhood, Maria thought about the choice ahead of her. She could try to change herself to fit in with these women, spending money she didn't have on clothes and accessories that might earn their approval. Or she could stay true to herself and risk remaining an outsider in her daughter's school community. Key question that worried her most wasn't about her own comfort, though. It was about Lucy. Would her daughter eventually face the same judgment? Would the other children learn to exclude Lucy because her family was different? Maria pulled into her driveway and sat in the car for another moment, looking at her small but cozy house. Through the window, she could see Lucy at the kitchen table, probably working on homework with the focused concentration that always made Maria proud. Whatever challenges lay ahead, Maria decided, she would face them with dignity. Her daughter was getting an excellent education, and that was what mattered most. But as she walked toward her front door, she couldn't shake the feeling that today's meeting was just the beginning of a much larger struggle. 3 weeks had passed since Maria's first committee meeting, and she had convinced herself that things might get better with time. Maybe the other mothers just needed to get to know her. Today was the school's monthly coffee morning, and Maria had volunteered to help with the bake sale table they had eventually agreed to include alongside their main fundraising gala. She woke up early that Tuesday morning, flour already dusted across her kitchen counter from the night before. Maria had spent hours making chocolate chip muffins, banana bread, and her grandmother's special recipe for cinnamon cookies. The kitchen smelled wonderful, and even Lucy had commented how good everything looked before catching the school bus. Maria carefully packed everything into clean containers, adding little handwritten labels with the names of each item and listing the ingredients for anyone with allergies. She wanted everything to be perfect, hoping that her contribution might help her find her place in this new community. The school's multi-purpose room had been transformed for the coffee morning. Round tables covered with white tablecloths were scattered throughout the space, and fresh flowers sat in small vases as centerpieces. Maria arrived 30 minutes early to set up her bake sale table near the entrance, arranging her homemade goods with care. Other mothers began arriving shortly after, and Maria immediately noticed the difference in their appearance. They looked like they had stepped out of a magazine, wearing perfectly coordinated outfits that screamed expensive taste. Tennis skirts, designer polo shirts, and pristine white sneakers seemed to be the uniform of choice. Their hair was styled, in that effortless way that actually took hours and hundreds of dollars to achieve. Maria looked down at her own outfit, a simple floral dress she had chosen because it was cheerful and clean. Suddenly it felt all wrong. Too bright, too casual, too different from what everyone else was wearing. "Oh, how homemade," came a voice behind her. Maria turned to see Patricia approaching with 3 other women, all carrying expensive tennis, rackets, and designer bags. They had clearly come straight from their morning game at the private country club. "I brought some things for the bake sale," Maria said, trying to keep her voice steady and friendly. "I made them last night." One of the women, a tall brunette with perfectly straight hair, peered at the muffins with an expression that suggested she was examining something unpleasant. "Did you make these in a commercial kitchen?" she asked. "We have to be so careful about health regulations, you know." Maria felt her cheeks grow warm. "I made them at home, but I followed all the proper food safety guidelines. I used to work in a bakery before my daughter was born." "How interesting," Patricia said, though her tone suggested it was anything but. "I'm sure they're fine, though most of our families prefer to purchase from established businesses for events like this." The group moved away, their tennis shoes squeaking softly against the polished floor. Maria heard fragments of their conversation as they walked. Mentions of their upcoming vacation to Martha's Vineyard, the new personal trainer at their exclusive gym, and complaints about having to wait 3 months for appointments with their preferred hairstylist. More mothers arrived, and Maria watched them greet each other with air kisses and excited chatter about shared experiences she couldn't relate to. They talked about their children's private tutoring sessions, weekend trips to their second homes, and upcoming charity events where individual tickets cost more than Maria spent on groceries in a month. Despite feeling increasingly out of place, Maria tried to stay positive. She smiled at everyone who passed her table and offered samples of her baked goods. A few mothers stopped politely, but most just glanced over and continued walking. Around 10 o'clock, the room was filled with the sound of animated conversation. Maria was arranging her remaining muffins when she heard quick footsteps approaching. She looked up to see Lucy running toward her, her backpack bouncing and her face lit up with excitement. "Mama, look what I made in art class." Lucy held up a colorful painting of their family standing in front of their house. It wasn't perfect, but it was filled with love and pride, and Maria's heart swelled looking at it. "It's beautiful, sweetheart," Maria said, giving her daughter a warm hug. "I love how you painted our garden. Mrs. Johnson said it was really good," Lucy beamed. "She's going to hang it in the hallway with the other special artwork." As they talked, Maria noticed that Lucy's classmate Madison had appeared nearby with her mother, the same brunette who had questioned Maria's baking earlier. Madison looked at Lucy's backpack, a sturdy but clearly older model that Maria had found at a discount store, and wrinkled her nose. "You, Lucy, your backpack looks so old and weird," Madison said loudly, making sure other children nearby could hear. "My mom bought me a new one last week that cost more than some people's cars." Lucy's smile faded, and she looked down at her backpack with confusion. It was the same backpack she had been excited about just a few months ago, picked out carefully, during a back-to-school shopping trip where every purchase had been considered and budgeted. "I like my backpack," Lucy said quietly, but Maria could see the uncertainty creeping into her daughter's eyes. "Well, I guess some people have different standards," Madison continued, clearly repeating words she had heard at home. Other children began to gather around, some looking uncomfortable but others starting to giggle. Maria felt anger rising in her chest, but she knew she had to handle this carefully. This wasn't just about her anymore, it was affecting her daughter. "Lucy, your backpack is perfect because it holds all your important school things," Maria said gently but loud enough for the other children to hear. "And your artwork is absolutely wonderful." Madison's mother appeared and placed a protective hand on her daughter's shoulder, as if Maria might be some kind of threat. "Madison, come along. We don't want to be late for your piano lesson with Professor Williams." As they walked away, Maria heard Madison's mother speaking in a voice that was meant to be overheard. "Some families just have different priorities. Darling, we're fortunate to be able to provide you with the best of everything." The comment stung, but what hurt more was watching Lucy's confidence deflate. Her daughter had been so proud of her artwork moments before, and now she was looking around the room with new awareness of how different she was from her classmates. "Mama, why don't we have fancy things like Madison's family?" Lucy asked quietly. Maria knelt down to her daughter's level, choosing her words carefully. "We have everything we need, mi amor. We have each other, we have our cozy home, and we have love. Sometimes that's worth more than fancy things." But even as she said the words, Maria wondered if they were enough in this environment. She watched other children gather around Madison, eager to be included in her circle. Lucy stood slightly apart, still holding her artwork but no longer glowing with pride. The coffee morning continued around them, but Maria felt increasingly isolated. Conversations flowed about exclusive summer camps, private tutors, and expensive family vacations. When someone did speak to her, it was with the kind of polite distance reserved for people who clearly didn't belong. As the event wound down, Patricia approached Maria's table one final time. Only a few items remained. Most families had opted for the professional pastries provided by an expensive catering company, rather than Maria's homemade offerings. "I hope you understand," Patricia said with false concern, "that our community has certain expectations. Perhaps you might be more comfortable at Roosevelt Elementary across town. They have a more diverse parent community that might be a better fit for your family's situation." The suggestion hit Maria like a physical blow. Roosevelt Elementary was the public school in the older part of town, with fewer resources and lower test scores. Moving Lucy there would mean giving up the educational opportunities they had worked so hard to provide. "Lucy is doing very well here," Maria replied, her voice steady despite the emotions churning inside her. "Her teachers say she's an excellent student." "Of course," Patricia said smoothly. "I'm sure she's a lovely child. It's just that sometimes, well, fit matters as much as academic performance in a community like ours." As Maria packed up her remaining baked goods, she overheard more whispered conversations. Words like inappropriate and doesn't understand our standards drifted her way. She realized that no matter how hard she tried, some people had already decided she didn't belong. The drive home was quiet. Lucy sat in the back seat, occasionally looking at her artwork, but without the earlier excitement. Maria's heart ached, knowing that her daughter was beginning to understand the social dynamics that surrounded them. That evening, as Maria helped Lucy with homework at their kitchen table, she made a decision. She wouldn't let these women make her daughter feel ashamed of who they were, but she also knew that the real battle was just beginning, and she wasn't sure how much more of this treatment she could handle before it started affecting Lucy's happiness at school. The spring picnic arrived on a perfect Saturday morning, with clear blue skies and a gentle breeze that rustled through the oak trees surrounding Hillcrest Elementary's playground. Maria had been looking forward to this day for weeks, hoping it might be a fresh start. Maybe in a more relaxed outdoor setting, the other parents would be friendlier. Maybe Lucy could simply enjoy playing with her classmates, without the tension that had been building over the past few months. Maria spent Friday evening preparing her contribution to the potluck lunch. She decided on her grandmother's potato salad recipe, the one that had always been a hit at family gatherings back home. She carefully boiled the potatoes, mixed in fresh herbs from her small garden, and added just the right amount of her special dressing. The dish looked beautiful in her large ceramic bowl, garnished with paprika and fresh parsley. Saturday morning, Maria chose her outfit carefully. She wanted to look nice, but also practical for an outdoor event. She settled on her navy blue dress, the same one she had worn to her cousin's wedding 3 years ago. It was simple but elegant, and she felt confident in it. She braided Lucy's hair with colorful ribbons and packed their picnic blanket, sunscreen, and a frisbee for Lucy to play with. When they arrived at the school, the parking lot was already half full with expensive SUVs and luxury cars that gleamed in the morning sun. Maria parked her modest sedan at the far end and walked with Lucy toward the playground area. carrying her potato salad and their picnic supplies. The scene before them looked like something out of a magazine. Families had set up elaborate picnic displays with matching chairs, coordinated tablecloths, and professional-looking coolers. Some had even brought portable canopies and decorative banners. The adults were dressed in what Maria now recognized as casual expensive. Designer jeans, polo shirts with subtle brand logos, and shoes that probably cost more than her monthly car payment. Maria felt that familiar knot forming in her stomach. Her simple blanket and homemade dish suddenly felt inadequate compared to the catered spreads and professional setups around her. But Lucy was already excited, pointing out her classmates and asking if she could go play on the swings. Of course, mi amor, Maria said, smoothing down her daughter's hair. Just stay where I can see you, okay? They found a spot under a large tree and spread out their blanket. Maria arranged their simple lunch and set her potato salad on the designated potluck table, next to dishes that looked like they had come from expensive restaurants. Her homemade contribution looked plain and ordinary among the elaborate presentations. Other families began gathering for the welcome speech from Principal Martinez. Maria stood at the edge of the crowd, holding Lucy's hand, trying to look like she belonged. That's when she noticed Patricia approaching with her usual group of followers. Today, Patricia wore white designer jeans and a silk blouse that probably cost more than Maria's rent. Her hair was perfectly styled despite the outdoor setting, and her jewelry caught the sunlight as she moved. The women with her were similarly dressed, all looking like they had stepped out of a country club catalog. "Oh, Maria," Patricia called, out, her voice carrying across the space between them. "How quaint that you decided to join us today." Maria forced a smile. "It's a beautiful day for a picnic. Lucy has been looking forward to this all week." "I'm sure she has," Patricia replied, her eyes scanning Maria's outfit with barely concealed judgment. "Though I do hope everyone remembered to bring food from approved sources. We can't be too careful with food safety, especially with homemade items." The comment was clearly directed at Maria's potato salad, and several nearby parents turned to look. Maria felt her cheeks burn, but kept her voice steady. "I followed all proper food handling procedures. I used to work in food service." "Of course you did," said Jennifer, one of Patricia's closest friends. She wore tennis whites and carried a designer tote bag that probably cost more than Maria made in a week. "It's just that most of our families prefer to stick with professional catering for events like this." Before Maria could respond, Lucy came running over, her face flushed with excitement from playing. "Mama, can I have some lemonade? The other kids are getting some from that big cooler over there." "Let me get you some water from our bag, sweetheart," Maria said. But Lucy was already pointing toward an elaborate beverage station set up by one of the families. "But Mama, all the other kids are drinking from there. Madison said her mom brought the fancy lemonade with real lemons." Maria looked toward the beverage station and saw Madison's mother, Christine, dispensing drinks to a group of children. The setup was impressive. Glass dispensers filled with different flavored waters, fresh fruit garnishes, and even small chalkboard signs labeling each option. "Please, Mama," Lucy asked again, her eyes wide with hope. Maria nodded reluctantly. They walked over to the drink station, where Christine was playing hostess with obvious pride. She wore a sundress that looked effortlessly chic and expensive, her blonde hair falling in perfect waves. "Lucy would like some lemonade, please," Maria said politely. Christine looked up with surprise, as if she hadn't noticed them approaching. "Oh, of course," she said, but her tone was cool. She poured a small cup for Lucy but barely acknowledged Maria's presence. "Thank you," Lucy said sweetly, taking a sip. "This is really good." "Well, it should be," Christine replied, speaking more to the other mothers nearby than to Lucy. "I had it specially made by the caterer from the country club. Real, organic lemons, imported sparkling water. Only the best for our children." The emphasis on our children wasn't lost on Maria. She guided Lucy away from the station, but not before overhearing Christine's next comment to another mother. "Some people just don't understand quality, do they?" As the picnic continued, Maria tried to enjoy herself for Lucy's sake. They played frisbee, had lunch on their blanket, and Lucy ran around with the other children. but Maria couldn't shake the feeling of being watched and judged. Every time she interacted with other parents, the conversations felt forced and uncomfortable. The situation reached its breaking point during the afternoon activities. Principal Martinez had organized some group games for the families, and everyone gathered in a large circle on the grass. Lucy was standing with her classmates laughing at something funny that had happened during a relay race. Patricia stepped into the center of the circle, clearly preparing to make an announcement. She waited until she had everyone's attention, her smile bright and practiced. "Before we wrap up this wonderful day," she began, "I wanted to share some exciting news about our upcoming charity initiatives. As you all know, our school community is blessed with many successful families who believe in giving back." Maria listened with growing unease, sensing where this might be heading. "We've decided to organize a special charity drive to help some of the less fortunate families in our community," Patricia continued, her eyes scanning the crowd. "Sometimes, right here among us, there are families who might be struggling financially or who might not have access to the same opportunities as others." The words hit Maria like a physical blow. Several parents turned to look at her, some with pity, others with the kind of uncomfortable awareness that comes when someone points out an obvious truth that everyone has been politely ignoring. "We believe it's important to reach out to these families," Patricia went on, "to help them understand that they're not alone, and that our community cares about all children, regardless of their background or circumstances." Lucy, who had been standing happily with her friends, suddenly looked confused. She could sense the shift in the atmosphere even if she didn't fully understand what was happening. Madison whispered something to another girl, and both of them glanced at Lucy with expressions that were no longer friendly. "We'll be collecting donations of clothing, school supplies, and other necessities," Patricia announced. "Items that some families might not be able to afford on their own. It's our Christian duty to help those in need." Maria's hands began to tremble. The implication was crystal clear to everyone present. She and Lucy were being publicly identified as the charity cases, the family that needed help from their more fortunate neighbors. The humiliation was overwhelming, made worse by the fact that it was happening in front of her daughter. Lucy walked slowly back to where Maria was standing, her earlier joy completely gone. She could see the other children, looking at her differently now, with a mixture of curiosity and pity that no child should have to experience. "Mama," Lucy whispered, tugging on Maria's dress. "Why is everyone staring at us? What did Mrs. Whitman mean about helping families?" Maria knelt down to her daughter's level, trying to keep her voice steady despite the anger and hurt churning inside her. Around them, conversations had resumed, but she could feel the weight of dozens of eyes still watching their interaction. "Sometimes, mi amor," Maria said carefully, "people say things that aren't very kind. But you and I know who we are, and that's what matters." But even as she spoke the words, Maria wondered if they were enough. For the first time since moving to this community, she seriously considered Patricia's earlier suggestion about transferring Lucy to a different school. Maybe they would be happier somewhere else, somewhere they wouldn't have to constantly prove their worth or defend their right to be there. Maria stood frozen in place as Patricia's words echoed in her mind. The charity announcement had created a heavy silence around their family, and she could feel dozens of eyes watching her reaction. Lucy pressed closer to her side, confused by the sudden change in atmosphere. For a moment, Maria seriously considered gathering their things and leaving the picnic early to spare her daughter any more embarrassment. Just as she was about to make that decision, the sound of car engines drew everyone's attention toward the parking lot. A sleek black sedan was pulling into the school grounds, followed by two more expensive-looking vehicles. The cars moved with the kind of quiet authority that comes with professional drivers and serious money. Patricia paused mid-sentence in her charity announcement, her perfectly practiced smile faltering slightly as she watched the unexpected arrivals. Other parents began turning their heads, curious about who would be arriving so late to the family picnic. The first car came to a smooth stop near the edge of the playground area. Maria watched along with everyone else, wondering if perhaps some important school board member or local politician was making an appearance. The driver stepped out first, a professional-looking man in a crisp suit who quickly moved to open the passenger door. Then Maria saw him. David Rodriguez stepped out of the car, Still wearing his business suit from what he had told her was a routine Saturday meeting at the office. But something about his presence seemed different today. More commanding, more serious. Behind him, several other men in expensive suits emerged from the other vehicles, clearly his business associates or security team. Maria's heart skipped a beat. David rarely attended school events because of his demanding work schedule, and she had grown used to handling these social situations alone. She had mentioned the picnic to him that morning, but he had said he probably wouldn't make it because of his important business meetings. Lucy spotted her father immediately and broke into a huge grin. "Papa," she called out, running across the grass toward him with her arms wide open. David's serious expression melted into pure joy as he saw his daughter approaching. He opened his arms and swept Lucy up in a warm embrace, spinning her around once before setting her down. The expensive watch on his wrist caught the sunlight, and Maria noticed how his presence seemed to command immediate attention from everyone around them. "Mi princesa," David said warmly, kissing the top of Lucy's head. "How was the picnic? Are you having fun?" "It was good until—" Lucy started, then glanced back toward the group of parents who were now staring openly at them, even at her young age. She sensed that something important was happening. David followed his daughter's gaze and immediately understood the tension in the air. His eyes found Maria standing apart from the other families, and he could see the strain on her face despite her attempt to appear composed. In that moment, he pieced together what had been happening at these school events that Maria had never fully described to him. Walking hand in hand with Lucy, David made his way across the grass toward Maria. His business associates followed at a respectful distance, their presence adding an air of importance to the scene. Conversations around the playground gradually died down as people tried to figure out who this man was and why he commanded such obvious respect and resources. "Hello, my love," David said softly as he reached Maria, pulling her into a gentle embrace. "I'm sorry I'm late. The meeting ran longer than expected." Maria felt a wave of relief wash over her as David's familiar warmth surrounded her. She had been handling these social challenges alone for months, not wanting to burden him with what she saw as her own failure to fit in. But now, with his arm around her shoulders, she felt stronger. "I'm glad you made it," she whispered back, meaning it more than he could possibly know. Patricia, who had been watching this interaction with growing unease, suddenly seemed to recognize David from somewhere. She whispered urgently to Jennifer, who immediately pulled out her phone and began typing quickly. Within moments, Jennifer's eyes widened in shock, and she showed her screen to Patricia. The phone displayed the latest Forbes magazine article about successful Latino business leaders, with David's photo prominently featured. The headline read, "Rodriguez Industries CEO expands international operations. Company value reaches $2.8 billion. Patricia's face went completely pale as she realized the magnitude of her mistake. The simple mother she had been publicly humiliating for months was married to one of the most successful businessmen in the state. The man she had just suggested needed charity was actually capable of buying and selling most of the families at this picnic without thinking twice about it. Word spread quickly through the group of parents as more phones came out, and quick internet searches revealed David's true identity. Whispered conversations erupted everywhere, as people realized that the family they had been treating as outsiders was actually wealthier and more successful than any of them had imagined. David noticed the sudden change in atmosphere, but remained focused on his family. He knelt down to Lucy's level and asked about her day, genuinely interested in every detail she wanted to share. His natural warmth and attention to his daughter stood in stark contrast to the social posturing that had defined most of the picnic interactions. "Papa, some of the other kids were being mean about my backpack," Lucy said quietly, glancing toward where Madison stood with her mother. "They said it looked old and weird." David's expression grew serious, and he looked directly at his daughter with the same intensity he brought to important business negotiations. "Lucy, remember what we talked about? The value of a person isn't measured by what they own, but by how kind they are to others. Your backpack carries your books and your dreams, and that makes it perfect." His words carried across the quiet playground, and several parents shifted uncomfortably as they realized their children might have been repeating attitudes they had learned at home. Christine, Madison's mother, suddenly appeared at David's side with a bright, desperate smile. Just an hour earlier, she had been dismissing Maria's homemade contributions and making snide comments about quality. Now she was practically glowing with false friendliness. "Mr. Rodriguez," she gushed, "I had no idea we had such a distinguished family in our school community. Madison has told me so much about how wonderful Lucy is in class." David stood slowly, his business instincts immediately recognizing the dramatic change in tone. He had built his company by reading people, and he could see right through Christine's sudden enthusiasm. "That's interesting," David replied politely but coolly, "because Lucy just told me that Madison has been unkind to her about her belongings." Christine's smile flickered. "Oh, I'm sure it was just a misunderstanding. Children can be so playful with each other." Patricia quickly inserted herself into the conversation, her previous charity announcement apparently forgotten. "Mr. Rodriguez, what an honor to finally meet you. I'm Patricia Whitman, PTA president. We would absolutely love to have you more involved in our school community. Perhaps you could speak at our next fundraising gala." The irony wasn't lost on anyone present. Just minutes before, Patricia had been publicly identifying his family as needing charity. Now she was practically begging for his involvement in their exclusive events. David looked around at the faces surrounding him. The same faces that had been cold or dismissive to his wife and daughter. He could see Maria watching the interaction, her expression a mixture of relief and something that looked like vindication. "I appreciate the invitation," David said diplomatically, "but I'll need to discuss it with my wife. She's been handling all the school involvement while I've been traveling for business." The emphasis on consulting with Maria was deliberate and clear. Several of the women who had been treating Maria as beneath their notice suddenly realized they would need to repair those relationships if they wanted access to David's influence and resources. Jennifer stepped forward eagerly. "Maria has been such a valued member of our parent community. We've been hoping to get to know her better." Maria almost laughed at the blatant reversal, but she maintained her composure. The same women who had suggested she might be more comfortable at a different school were now claiming they had always valued her presence. As the afternoon continued, the change in social dynamics was dramatic and immediate. Parents who had been avoiding Maria all day suddenly found reasons to strike up conversations. Invitations to coffee dates and play dates were extended with genuine-sounding enthusiasm. Children who had been excluding Lucy began asking if she wanted to join their games. David watched it all with the sharp eye of someone who understood power dynamics in business and recognized them in social settings as well. He was polite but reserved, clearly evaluating each interaction and forming his own opinions about the people who had been treating his family poorly. As families began cleaning up their picnic areas, David helped Maria fold their blanket while Lucy played nearby with some classmates who were suddenly eager to be her friends. The transformation was complete. They had gone from being the objects of charity to being the most sought-after family at the school. But David could see in Maria's eyes that the damage had already been done. Months of subtle and not so subtle humiliation couldn't be erased by one afternoon of desperate social climbing. The walk to their car felt different this time. Maria held David's hand while Lucy skipped ahead of them, suddenly surrounded by classmates who were eager to be her friend. The same children who had been whispering about her old and weird backpack just hours earlier were now asking when they could come over for a play date. David noticed everything. The way Patricia hurried to catch up with them, her earlier charity announcement conveniently forgotten. The way Christine practically pushed Madison forward to apologize to Lucy for her earlier comments. The way parents who had been avoiding eye contact with Maria all afternoon were now waving enthusiastically and calling out invitations. "Mr. Rodriguez, wait." Patricia's voice carried across the parking lot. She was nearly running in her designer heels, clutching her expensive purse. "I wanted to discuss our upcoming fundraising gala. We could really use someone with your expertise and connections." David stopped and turned around, his expression polite but unreadable. Behind Patricia, several other parents had gathered, all wearing hopeful smiles that hadn't been there an hour ago. "That's an interesting change in perspective," David said calmly. "If I remember correctly from what my wife told me, you recently suggested that our family might be more comfortable at Roosevelt Elementary." Patricia's face flushed red. "Oh, that was just... I was only thinking about... Well, sometimes new families need time to adjust to our community standards." "Community standards," David repeated thoughtfully. "And what exactly are those standards, Mrs. Whitman?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. Patricia looked around desperately for support from her usual group of followers, but they were all suddenly very interested in checking their phones or watching their children play. "Well, we believe in excellence, of course," Patricia stammered. "Academic achievement, proper values, giving back to the community." "Giving back," David nodded slowly. "Like the charity drive you announced today? The one designed to help less fortunate families in your community?" The reminder of her earlier humiliating announcement made Patricia wince visibly. Several parents nearby shifted uncomfortably, realizing they had all been party to publicly embarrassing one of the wealthiest families in the area. Maria watched the exchange with mixed feelings. Part of her felt vindicated seeing these women scramble to repair the damage they had caused, but another part of her felt sad that it had taken David's wealth and status to earn basic respect for their family. "Papa," Lucy tugged on David's jacket, "can we go home now? I want to show you the art project I made." David's entire demeanor softened as he looked down at his daughter. "Of course, mi princesa. I can't wait to see what you created." He turned, back to Patricia and the group of parents. "I'll tell you what. Instead of your exclusive gala, why don't we organize something that brings the whole school community together? Something that celebrates what we all have in common instead of what sets us apart?" Patricia looked confused. "I'm not sure I understand." "A community celebration," David explained patiently, "where every family can participate regardless of their background or bank account. Where children can see their parents working together instead of competing with each other." Jennifer stepped forward eagerly. "That sounds wonderful. We could have it at the country club and—" "No," David interrupted gently but firmly. "At the school. In the gymnasium. With potluck food that families make themselves. With activities that don't require expensive equipment or exclusive memberships." The suggestion clearly horrified the women who were used to their elaborate events at expensive venues, but they were in no position to argue, having just discovered that the man they were trying to impress valued simplicity over extravagance. "Rodriguez Industries will sponsor the entire event," David continued, "but the planning will be done by all parents working together. No committees based on social status or financial contributions." Maria felt a surge of pride watching her husband. He could have used his newfound social power to demand apologies or to embarrass the women who had been cruel to their family. Instead, he was trying to create something positive that would benefit everyone. Over the following weeks, the change in how their family was treated became almost comical in its completeness. The same women who had whispered about Maria's homemade contributions were now asking for her recipes. Children who had excluded Lucy were suddenly competing for her attention. Invitations arrived daily for playdates, dinner parties, and exclusive social events. But Maria found herself declining most of these invitations. The sudden friendship felt hollow and calculating. She could see the difference between genuine kindness and social climbing, and most of the attention they were receiving fell into the latter category. The community celebration that David had proposed became the talk of the school. For the first time, every family was involved in the planning process. Maria found herself working alongside parents she had never really spoken to before. Families who had been quietly dealing with their own struggles to fit into this demanding social environment. There was Carlos, a single father who worked 2 jobs to afford the private school tuition for his son. There was Amy, whose husband had recently lost his job, but who was too proud to admit their family was struggling financially. There was Robert, a widowed father who felt completely out of place among the social circles dominated by mothers. As they worked together on planning committees, Maria realized that she and David weren't the only ones who had been feeling like outsiders. Many families had been putting on facades to fit in with the seemingly perfect community standards that Patricia and her group had established. The evening of the community celebration arrived on a warm spring night. The school gymnasium had been transformed with simple decorations made by the children and families working together. Long tables were filled with dishes from every culture and background represented in the school. The air was filled with laughter, music, and the sounds of children playing together without the social barriers that had divided them before. Maria wore the same navy blue dress she had worn to the picnic, but this time she felt genuinely comfortable in it. She watched Lucy playing with a diverse group of children, their differences in background and belongings forgotten in the joy of simply being kids together. David moved through the crowd, talking easily with other parents about their children's education, their hopes for the community, and their shared experiences as fathers and mothers. He was dressed casually in khakis and a polo shirt, looking like any other dad at a school event. Patricia approached them near the end of the evening, looking genuinely humbled for the first time since Maria had known her. "I owe you both an apology," she said quietly. "I was wrong about so many things. This celebration has shown me what our community could be if we focused on what really matters." Maria looked at the woman who had caused her so much pain over the past months. She could have been cold or dismissive. She could have reminded Patricia of all the cruel things she had said and done. Instead, she chose grace. "We all make mistakes," Maria said simply. "What matters is what we do going forward." As families began cleaning up after the celebration, Maria noticed something beautiful happening. Parents were exchanging phone numbers across social and economic lines. Children were making plans for playdates without considering whether their families shopped at the same stores or belonged to the same clubs. Lucy ran up to her parents, her face glowing with happiness. "Mama, Papa, this was the best school party ever. Can we do it again next year?" David and Maria exchanged a look of understanding. They had won something much more valuable than social acceptance from the wealthy families. They had helped create a community where their daughter could grow up valuing people for who they were, rather than what they owned. Driving home that night, with Lucy chattering excitedly in the back seat about all the new friends she had made, Maria reflected on their journey. The months of humiliation and struggle had been painful, but they had led to something better than simple acceptance into an exclusive social circle. They had learned that true belonging isn't about changing yourself to fit other people's expectations. It's about having the courage to be authentic and finding the people who value that authenticity. Most importantly, they had shown Lucy that dignity comes from how you treat others, not from how others treat you. As they pulled into their driveway, Maria looked at their modest house with fresh appreciation. It wasn't the biggest or fanciest house in the neighborhood, but it was filled with love, respect, and genuine happiness. And in the end, that was worth more than all the designer handbags and country club memberships in the world.